We are with the subject now called hermeneutics. And initially, I told you what hermeneutics is all about. A little definition, a little historical sketch on what hermeneutics is about, and how hermeneutics in the Middle Ages, in the modern times, became a very important subject for reasons which I have already highlighted in my previous lectures. And we have seen how philosophical hermeneutics, philosophical hermeneutics has become a specialized branch. So it was not there. So there are specialized branches of hermeneutics today, like biblical hermeneutics, legal hermeneutics, philosophical hermeneutics, theological hermeneutics. So they are specialized branches. Then we will discuss a little about Friedrich Schleiermacher, who is called as the father of modern hermeneutics. A few things about Schleiermacher already I have updated to you. Yesterday we saw another very important figure in the philosophical hermeneutics. He is none other than our friend Wilhelm Dilthey, and we see that Dilthey makes a distinction between two types of subjects, two types of branches of studies. One is the natural sciences, and the other one is the human sciences. And he says natural sciences, they need just an explanation. There is no need of an interpretation of that. Whereas when it comes to human sciences, we require interpretation, and therefore the branch of hermeneutics that touches most is the human sciences. Then he also, at the end, we said that the main concern of Wilhelm Dilthey was to finally to understand life itself. So philosophical hermeneutics pays attention to the question of understanding life. So life itself has to be understood. So that is the major aspect. It is not just understanding a topic. It is neither just understanding a book. It is not just understanding somebody's writings. Ultimately, philosophical hermeneutics aims at understanding life itself. So understanding life constitutes the major aspect of philosophical hermeneutics. We move on with the series of people who have contributed to the philosophical hermeneutics. And the next thinker and philosopher is none other than it is Martin Heidegger, another very important figure, a very significant figure in the question of philosophical hermeneutics. So, as we have already seen the philosophy of Martin Heidegger, we already understood to a large extent the philosophy of Martin Heidegger. The major question that Martin Heidegger was interested in is the question of being, and the question of being is forgotten. And therefore, the task of the philosopher, and particularly the task of the phenomenology, is to know the being, understand the being, and know being in its originality, being in its core reality, being in its fundamental reality, which was not the case in the earlier understanding of being, which was done by Aristotle and St. Thomas Aquinas. So he pleads for the study of being in its roots, in its very origin. That's why his ontology is called as fundamental ontology. So he's inviting us to understand the so-called phenomena of being, the so-called phenomena of being in its core sense, in its fundamental sense, in its ground sense. Now, understanding being is ultimately the goal of hermeneutics, philosophical hermeneutics, or living that being. More than understanding, we live that being. So phenomena manifests itself. We have seen that in phenomenology. The phenomena manifests itself, and here for Heidegger, the phenomena is nothing other than the phenomena called being. It manifests, and when it manifests, I try to live that phenomena. I try to understand that phenomena. And to understand means I interpret the phenomena. I interpret the phenomena. That's why yesterday also I said that phenomenology is automatically connected to hermeneutics, because phenomenology is concerned with knowing phenomena, living that phenomena, experiencing that phenomena. And experiencing the phenomena means to understand the phenomena. To understand the phenomena means to interpret the phenomena. And therefore, phenomenology and hermeneutics are going hand in hand. Phenomenology, by its very nature, by its very core aspect, it is attached to what Heidegger calls hermeneutics. So hermeneutics and phenomenology go hand in hand. So that is the first point we have to note with regard to Martin Heidegger to the question of hermeneutics. The second point, which is a very important point for Heidegger, hermeneutics must be placed. So far, hermeneutics was placed at the epistemological level. So far, hermeneutics, emphasis in hermeneutics was placed at the epistemological level. And Heidegger is calling that from the epistemological level, we have to move to the ontological level. From the epistemological level, we have to move to the ontological level. What is the meaning? What are the implications? What is the meaning and what are the implications when we say we have to move from the epistemological level to the ontological level? Now, epistemological level means it's a level of understanding. That's why the word episteme, you have studied epistemology. And epistemology is a science of knowledge. So, epistemological level, by epistemological level, I try to understand what a thing is. I try to know what a thing is. I try to know what a thing is. I try to understand. I use different theories of knowledge to understand a thing. I use different types of knowledge or theories of knowledge to understand. So it is emphasis is on knowledge part of the reality. So how much do I know about a particular thing? How much do I know about you? How much do I know even about me? How much do I know about me? So the whole emphasis is on the cognitive level, mind level. The knowledge always applies to the cognitive level, the mind level of a reality. The cognitive level of the reality, the mind level of the reality. That is epistemological level. Am I clear what is epistemological level?
Yes, Father.
Am I clear? So, am I clear to all what is
Yes,
epistemological level?
Father.
Yes,
Okay.
Father.
Yes, Father.
Yes, Father.
So, we have to see now if it is epistemological level, what is an ontological level? Now, ontological level, ontology, as the word comes from, it pays attention to the being level, the being level, the very existence level, the very existence level. So, in this existence level, the emphasis is not so much on the cognitive dimension, the mind dimension. In the existential level, the emphasis is on the living level, the existence level, the living level, the existence level, existential. So, what Heidegger is trying to say is that before knowing, I must exist first. I must exist first before knowing. Knowing comes only after existence. I cannot know unless something is existing first. So existence precedes knowledge. So he says, so far everybody was talking about knowledge aspect of reality. Now we have to talk in terms of the existence aspect of reality. So we have to pay attention to the existential level of a thing. So being is first in its existence, then only in its knowledge. The second aspect in the first and the difference between the first and the second difference between the epistemological level and the ontological level. First the difference I said. First difference was in the epistemological level, emphasis is on knowing. In the ontological level, emphasis is on being. In the epistemological level, the emphasis is on the cognitive dimension, knowing dimension. In the ontological level, the emphasis is on being dimension, existence dimension. Third, in the existential, in the epistemological level, there is always a distinction between subject and object. So, what is knowledge? Knowledge is nothing but a rapport, a contact between the subject and the object, the mind and the object. That is what you have studied in also the theories of truth, the, the logical truth. What is logical truth? Logical truth is nothing but a correspondence between the mind and the object. Logical truth. So there is always a distinction maintained here. A distinction is maintained between the subject and the object. A distinction is maintained between the subject and the object at the epistemological level. Whereas in the ontological level, the distinction between the subject and the object does not exist. So, for example, when I know myself, I am trying to understand my own existence. There is no such a thing called I am knowing myself. I am the subject. My mind is the subject. My body is the object. No. Other day also we referred to Ricker. When I touch my right hand touches my left hand, no such a thing called Joseph Martis. Now there is a right hand of Joseph Martis. That is the subject. And there is a left hand of Joseph Martis, who is the object. So the right hand is touching the left hand subject. No. I am touching myself. That's all. Just to give you the distinction between subjects. So, at the ontological level, the distinction between the subject and the object is removed. And therefore, there is a perfect understanding. When there is a distinction between subject and object, there is no perfect understanding because there is always a distance between the subject and the object. There is always a distance. Subject can never become object. Object will never become subject. There is a certain amount of distance is maintained. Whereas at the ontological level, this distance is not there. Subject and object are not two different entities. Subject and object are so unified to each other. Subject and object are so unified to each other. So he says, interpretation or hermeneutics should pay attention. We should understand hermeneutics more from the ontological level than from the epistemological level. Why? Because why? Because at the epistemological level, we are not able to reach the reality fully, or we are not able to understand the reality fully. Whereas at the ontological level, we are able to reach the reality to the maximum. Therefore, the ultimate goal of hermeneutics is to reach, to understand the reality. So we have to go to the question of ontology. Am I making things clear?
Yes, Father.
Anybody who has not understood? Is it? I did see that Robin had come sometimes. Is he there?
He was there, Father, I think.
Yeah, I saw his name popping up. Most
Yes,
probably he's
yes.
not getting there. My friend Avil also has come joined. So Avil
Yes.
has joined. I can see
Ragesh.
popping. Yes. Avil, are you there? So Avil's picture is there. Most probably he's able to hear me anyway. So the distinction between the ontological level and at the epistemological level, and for Heidegger, the philosophical hermeneutics must pay attention to the ontological level. The next issue in Heidegger, somebody write down this very systematically, because in the notes you don't find. When I explain, it becomes much better. When I explain, it becomes so somebody write nicely and you can circulate among yourself systematically. I speak simple words. The next point we see in Heidegger is that hermeneutics or comprehension or understanding is fundamentally, it is understanding being. It is to understand being. So it is not just to understand some objects. So the fundamental core aspect of hermeneutics for Heidegger is to know or understand being. So that is the prime concern of hermeneutics, to know or to understand or to comprehend being. And we have seen. And who is able to understand being very well? Who is able to understand being well?
Dasein.
So who is that? Loudly,
Dasein.
Stephen.
Man.
Yeah, what is the other one you said? Tell it nicely.
Dasein.
Dasein.
Yeah, it is Dasein. Dasein. Pronounce it correctly. Dasein. So Dasein is able to get the fullness of this Dasein. It is Dasein is able to get or understand being in its fullness. So we have seen the salient features of Dasein or being. What are some of the salient features of Dasein? Somebody tells me very fast. Somebody tells me very fast. What are some of the salient features?
He is in the world, being in the world.
Being is in the world. Anything
World.
else?
Then
Being is
the
temporal.
world.
Being is temporal. Any other?
Being is an
Being is
anxiety.
in anxiety.
Being is
Being
for
is in anxiety.
anxiety. Yeah. Then
Being is always with another being.
being is with other being. Mit sein.
He
With the
has
other.
conscience.
Being as
He has
conscience. Yeah.
Conscience.
Yeah. Conscience. Anything else?
Further, Heidegger
Being
brings
is
the
temporal.
question of
Temporal.
Being for
Anything
death.
else? Being for death. Being for death. Anything else?
Is in the
So you
world
see,
with language.
yeah, being is covered with language. So note down all these points, and in simple words, it becomes easy to understand. So you see, so he is trying to capture being, and the process that he has done in his famous book. What is the title of the famous book of Heidegger? What is the
Time,
title of the famous book of Heidegger?
being and time.
Being and time.
Being and time.
Being and time. Being and time. Looks like all others are sleeping there. Being and Time is the most famous book. Being and Time. So you see, Heidegger has already begun his work of hermeneutics in his work Being and Time, and he has tried to understand. He has tried to get into the core of the question of being. Therefore, the main task of hermeneutics, as it was the main task of his phenomenology, The main task of the phenomenology of Heidegger was to go to the root of the being. So once again, the same task is understood to understand being, to interpret being. So to interpret being. Interpretation here is not just a mental exercise. It's not just an epistemological process. Not just a mental exercise. As I said just now, just before that I understand. So understanding a being is more and knowing the being as in its existential aspect, not in its mind aspect. So knowing the being here refers to having an experience of the being. Knowing the being here refers to having an experience of the being. It is an experience of the being. So it's fundamentally a being in the world. And being in the world, for Heidegger, is a world with the world in which I live. The facticity, another word which had come earlier, we did not deal so facticity. So somebody makes a little, yesterday somebody sent me, who was that? Somebody sent me that about, I think it was about, I did not read, I didn't have time. Who was that who sent me some homework?
Sijamon.
Sijamon. Is he there?
Sijamon is connected to the phone, Father. He couldn't get.
Okay, so Sijamon, has he sent you the work? Has he sent you the work?
Sijamon is.
Yes, Father.
Sijamon, this one, what is that? You read and let me know. Rajesh, you read the work of Sijamon. You read the work of Sijamon and let me know whether you can do some correction or some addition and all that. Then you send to all. Rajesh, are you with me?
Let me see, Father.
Yeah, so you do the work there.
Yes, Father,
Sijamon.
let me see.
No, you have not received? Have you
Let me
received?
see, Father, if it is there.
You fellow, you are busy with this one. You have not seen the work. Oh. So you
I have
see,
seen, Father, it was there.
you read, my dear man, read, understand, and if there is nothing more can be added to that, then you do that and send us. I am also interested, you do that. So, I was talking to
Yes,
you
Father.
about facticity, the concept of facticity according to Heidegger. The concept of facticity. Somebody makes a half a page or 3/4 of the page or 1/4 of the page on facticity of Heidegger. Correct understanding. Who will do that? Who
I
will
will do,
do
Father.
that? Who?
Shebin.
Shebin, you do that. You have never done any homework so far, so you do that. So Shebin. So facticity, the concept of facticity. Don't just copy from this one and send me, okay? Don't
Yes,
just
Father.
copy from this one, but you try to understand and find out facticity. So Heidegger says being is in the world, it's in a factual world, factual world. What does it mean, factual world? Factual world means it's the daily world. I'm in the world, I'm in the daily world. I'm not in an Ethiopic world. I'm not in an ideal world. I'm in a factual world. A factual world which is given to you. My friend Dominic, he's in a factual world. He's staying in a parish there, and once in a way he goes home and he buys fish. He takes the parish fish here and there. Then he has to do some sacristy work, I don't know, most probably. Then he has to do cleaning work in the parish. So it is a facticity. Dominic, are you there?
Yes, Father. I am here.
Are you doing all this?
Yes, Father.
See, that's a facticity.
Eating.
That is the world in which you live. That is the real world. My friend Lloyd is in a factual world. He has to go to the garden, work there. He has to go to the parish.
Yes,
He has to
Father.
be at home.
Yes, Father.
He has to varieties of things. That's a factual world. Factual world. You see, that is the factual world. We live in a facticity. My friend William is in a seminary, so it's not much in a factual world. He's there, but he's there. My friend Joel, so he's in a factual world, he's at home. He has to do some work. I suppose he's doing some work at home. I guess he
Yes,
will do.
Father. Yes, Father. Yes,
And he
Father.
comes here every day to collect his mother and drop her and does some work at home. And I suppose he's helping his mother and studying and going into church. Daily world, that's the factual. That is the context in which we live. Factual world means the context in which we live. The factual world. And in the context that we live, our being becomes, our being grows. In the world, in the factual world, our being blooms. You have heard the statement, bloom where you are planted. So we bloom where we are planted. The bloom, the soil in which we are planted, the soil. So that is the factual world. The factual world means the real world in which I live. Factual world means the real world in which I live. It is the world in which I exist. It is the world in which I am I am involved. It is the world in which I am involved. That is the factual world. So he says facticity. So I am being in the world. That's my real world. That's my factual world. So hermeneutics takes from the factual world. It's not a theoretical ideal world that where I am. I live in a factual world. So my world is the world in which I live. Another important item, another very important, anytime we may be collapsing, so don't run, anytime we may collapse. The internet is indicating anytime we may collapse, but
Father.
come back,
Come back.
come back. Come back. Second
Father.
part will be shorter. I will not take full time, shorter. So the
Thank you, Father.
understanding the real factual world and understanding in the factual world is what Heidegger is talking about. So it is being in the world. So my comprehension, my hermeneutics is understanding or living that being, more than understanding, or living